Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
Hard to believe it's almost the month of June. Time flies. I find that time travels faster as I get older. Remember back when we were kids and we wanted to do something, or we were waiting for the day we get our allowance, or there was a special event on the horizon or whatever, and we were like, can we? And mom and dad would say, well, we can do it next weekend. Which seemed like an eternity. Oh my God, it's 5 days I have to wait. It's forever. You know? Now I blink, 5 days, gone. Wait a minute. It was just last weekend, and now it's next weekend or this weekend? What? Wait, it's almost the month of June? Wait a minute. What's happening? Things are spinning much too quickly. I'm already disoriented. Those of you who are under the age of 30, I'm just saying, buckle up. Because when you hit midlife, you will wake up one day and go, hey, wait a minute. When I fell asleep, it was January, and now it's Thanksgiving. That shit totally happens as we get older. Anyway, it's been a wild month. You know, we had the God-awful movie show late last week, a bonus broadcast. And then before that, we had a show which I got a lot of feedback on and a little bit of pushback, as it was called Cholesterol, You Have One Job. We were talking about the fatty deposits in the cells of Captain Comb-Over, the tangerine Palpatine of the White House, Donald Trump, and how many of us are rooting for his demise of natural causes. And some people thought, this is just base. It's beneath you. I can't believe you're speaking with glee about the day that he finally keels over. And I just can't apologize for it. I'm just, every day when I log on, I'm like, is he alive? There's a website. It's called Alive or Dead. And people like to use it for celebrities that they haven't seen in a while. So you just log on and you're like, this celebrity, you type in the name, dead or alive, and it says dead or alive, and it gives you their age. How many times have we been in a conversation and somebody will be like, hey, did you know that they just turned 98 years old? Like Dick Van Dyke he's either 99 or 100 years old. And the legendary Dick Van Dyke is still alive. Well, you can go to a website and you can type his name in every day and find out. Maybe it's morbid. I don't know. Speaking of death, I went to this is what happened. I woke up the other day and it was early, and I don't know if someone sent me the link, but there's a website that will quote unquote predict the date and the manner of your death. And so it's a death date website. It's very dark. It's just right up my alley. So I went to the site, and of course, it's not, nobody knows. It's bullshit. We all know that, but I still filled out the form. What's your age, right? When were you born? What's your lifestyle like? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you get exercise? What's your height? What's your weight? It calculates BMI, your body mass index, which I have heard is total crap. I've heard that BMI is not actually like a useful thing. That's a whole other conversation. But I typed in all of my metrics and I said, when and how am I going to die? And lucky me, it popped right up. I discovered, thanks to the death clock, at the age of 57 years and just under 2 months, their calculations say my death date will be the 29th of January, 2064. It will be a Tuesday when I suddenly keel over at the ripe old age of 95 years and just under 10 months. Over 14,000 days left. What a relief. I guess that's better than, typing in all of your stats and it says you will live to be 57 years and 4 months because, I would have a lot to get done. I would need to get my affairs in order pretty quickly. I'm just saying. The cause of my death, according to the bullshit website, is cardiovascular disease. And somebody made the salient point that, if you're 95, your vascular system has had a pretty good run. Degeneration is probably understandable. This is not too big a leap. Anyway, that's how I started my day, the death date thing. Somebody on the cholesterol show was talking about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, and we were talking about the conspiracy theories and how, his ear healed up awfully quickly. You remember when people were walking around taping tampons to their ears? The MAGAs were taping tampons. But a lot of people were like, this is staged. It's bullshit. So much stuff doesn't make any sense. But I got uncomfortable because I don't like the idea of, we got into, we don't, assassination is not, it's not what we want. It's not who we are. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what else to say. It's just not. So we were talking about how, this needs to happen organically and naturally. He's not a spring chicken. But as soon as I had that conversation about the guy and the shooter and the ear and all that, some weird shit started to pop up on my Facebook feed about how it's all a big conspiracy and how none of it makes any sense. The trajectory of the projectile, the nature of the injury, even the gradient colors of the blood, none of it looked real. So was it all a big staged event so that he could put his fist in the air and show strength in the wake of a lethal threat? I tend to lean into Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the easiest. Conspiracy theory speculation usually don't help us, but it does bug me. Some of the stuff I look at, it just, and I don't want to become Joe Rogan either. So I guess we know what we know and we don't what we don't. I don't know. Is that a cop out? Anyway. FYI, going to be in Wichita, speaking for Wichita Oasis this Sunday. I love the Oasis model because it's kind of a come one, come all. You don't have to be atheist. You can be religious, spiritual, whatever, but it is very much a pro-humanist and pro-science thing. And there are Oasis groups in cities all around the country. Kansas City's got one, Houston's got a big one, and I'm going to be speaking at Wichita Oasis Sunday morning, and it's totally free. So if you're in the area, come on out. Going to be a great time. Go to sethandrews.com/events for details on that. I also mentioned last week, and I'll mention again, that the Thinking Atheist store is back, and I've got the Thinking Person icon now on mugs and t-shirts, and we've got the cat drawing on mugs and t-shirts, and new products are going to be added over the coming months. But you can go to thethinkingatheist.com, and then there's a shop button on the tab at the top. So go and kind of browse and see if anything tickles your fancy. It's a great way to have Thinking Atheist merch in your house, get some swag, support the work at the same time. Thethinkingatheist.com. click on the shop tab. Okay. Plenty of phone calls to get to on this broadcast, and so we begin. 202. Hi, what's your name?
My name is Frank.
Hi, Frank.
Please forgive my speech. I have some issues with autism, so my speech sometimes comes out a little messy.
Oh, you're doing great.
But I thought I would, thank you. You were talking about the assassination attempt on Trump. I don't remember where I saw this. I think it was on one of the TV news channels that the bullet didn't actually hit Trump. It hit the glass teleprompter, and the glass flew out, and that's what took his ear out. Don't quote me on this, but that's what I heard probably the evening after the event happened.
I'm going to have
what
to look
I really
that
wanted
up.
to talk about, what I really wanted to talk about was an experience I had practically in your backyard about 2 years ago. I was having some work done on my RV in Oklahoma City, and I started getting some light pains in my chest and my left arm. I'd had a heart attack before, so I decided to go to the hospital to make sure. The closest hospital was a major hospital on the south side of Oklahoma City. Well, they came in, they put me in this little room. People came in, stuck the little sticker things all over you, connected me to the machine, and they disconnected me. They left, and I was left in the room with a nurse to fill out the paperwork. And, I was giving her my information, and then she asked, "What religion are you?" And I said, "I'm an atheist." And I was watching her, and her whole body jerked like I had slapped her real hard. She didn't say anything else. She finished up whatever the line was she was working on and left the room. Well, about 25, 30 minutes later, some guy comes and stands in the doorway and says, "You're not having a heart attack, you can go." There was absolutely no thing of trying to figure out what my problem was. I suspect it was acid indigestion. But I put my shirt back on, walked out into the hallway, and the entire emergency department was completely empty. There were no nurses, no doctors, no patients, and all the doors to the little patient cubicles were open. And I saw about 3 or 4 of them where the bed had been rolled out away. I had to figure my own way out. I ended up having to walk all the way around the hospital to get to my truck, which I had parked in the front. But that is the first time in my life I have ever actually had something like that happen to me. It has stuck with me pretty heavy.
So your inference here is that once they knew you were godless, they kept a distance.
And the fact that nobody tried to figure out what was really wrong with me, that hurt also.
Have you noticed that when something happens to a believer, God is using this light and momentary affliction to build their faith, or if they die, God called them home. It was their time. Their work on earth was done. I don't know. They've got some sort of apologetic at the ready. But if it was to happen to you or me as atheist, God pulled the plug because we had rejected him and he killed us or allowed us to die. Have you noticed that the narrative changes based on who believes what?
I actually haven't had any experience with that at all. I've had some instances where when I told somebody I was an atheist, I can't pull up any particular one or instance in my brain right now, but I never had any kind of reaction like they've got to get away from this devil that has gotten into their facility. I have a whole bunch of things wrong with me. I'm now 73. I've had full-blown AIDS since 1991. I am in the process of dealing with prostate or anal cancer, have diabetes. Just the problems go all the way around. That's one of the reasons I'm having some difficulty with my speech. But the autism also causes that. I like your channel. I'm sticking things in the wrong way.
You're doing well. No, I'm totally tracking. This has actually been a linear narrative, so I don't know. Don't apologize. You're doing it. I'm so sorry these things have happened to you. I'm interested too that science made it possible for people who were diagnosed with AIDS, especially in the 90s, to be able to survive and live much longer lives. And for that, I am very thankful to science. I'm sorry that, the infection happened.
Oh, I am,
But I'm glad you're still kicking, still with us, despite the challenges.
Yeah. We figured out who gave it to me. There was a couple of guys, this was in '83, that were doing stuff, and they knew they had it and weren't telling anybody. In my entire life, I've had sex with maybe 6 or 7 people. Let's see, it was in '83, I met my life partner and eventual husband. He passed away 6 years ago now. But I appreciate every day that I have, because when I was first diagnosed in '91, they gave me 6 months. And at the time, I lived in near Washington, D.C., or just outside of town. And my HIV doctor, which was my primary doctor too, when I told him I was getting ready to move to Colorado, which is where I'm at now, he said he was sorry to see me go because I was the only patient that he had from that period that survived. So believe me, I appreciate every single day that I've got.
It's a good encouragement for the rest of us, right? Seize the day.
Yeah.
And be grateful despite the challenges. That experience at the hospital is fascinating to me. I'd be curious. I'd like to be a mind reader to know what was happening inside the skulls of those who sort of vanished in your hour of need, especially when they have a duty of care to all of their fellow human beings. But it is a fascinating story. Big hugs from me and the audience to you and yours, my friend. You keep kicking, okay?
Thank you very much. This is the second time in my life I've ever done a call-in.
You did great, too. I mean, you really did well. Oh, there's no apology necessary. You're smooth as silk, smooth like butter. You did good.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right. We'll
Keep
see you
up
later.
the good work.
I took a second and looked up the story about the bullet striking the teleprompter and the fragments of glass hitting the ear. According to the Associated Press, as published in July of last year, the FBI confirmed it was indeed a bullet that struck the former president's ear. This was again before the election. They said both of the teleprompters were totally intact after the shooting. Anyway, that's the official word in from the AP. I've got Irene dialing into the switchboard. Welcome to the show, Irene. What's up?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can indeed. What's up?
Well, I'm calling you from France. I've been living here for 40 years, but I've been listening to American podcasts for many, many years. I've been listening to you for years and loving you. And if I don't have a French accent, it's because I grew up in California, okay?
Oh, well, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that.
Somebody said something earlier, maybe it was you, about a president needing to have a heart big enough to accommodate the whole country.
Oh, it was a caller
word?
on the show who had that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I've been thinking about in conjunction with several things, but I want to narrow it down to 2. One is that ideally, in an ideal society, what we would have is what Plato would have called the philosopher king. That is to say, a head of state who has the country at heart and has the competence to manage all the workings of the state. And ideally, that's what we should have. Unfortunately, I don't think we will ever have exactly that. We've had close to that sometimes, but not really that. And today, we're so far from that it's not even on the radar.
Can I ask you a question, Irene? Forgive the interruption, but
Sure.
You living in France, what kind of things are you hearing about the United States over there?
Oh, God. Well, first of all, I listen to U.S. podcasts all the time. So what I'm hearing isn't the same thing as the French people, because I'm still an American. I put in my paperwork to request naturalization as a French citizen, but it's all kind of, I'm waiting to hear from them.
Sure.
But most French people I talk to are just shocked at, I don't talk politics with a lot of French people, but the ones I do talk politics with just don't understand. They don't understand how the American people could do this. And I have to explain to them that it was only, first of all, he didn't get a majority of the popular vote. Second of all, everybody doesn't vote. And so it comes down to, I think he got about a third of the voting public's vote. But he did get more votes than Kamala Harris did, or more. Well, he did actually get more popular votes. And of course, he got the Electoral College.
I mean, if you count the Democrat and the independent votes, he didn't get as many. But yes, he got the popular votes by the letter of the law. So you're saying that they're scratching their heads the way many of us here are scratching our heads. Do they know that we all haven't lost our minds? I mean, I just want to apologize to the rest of the world and say there is a resistance, right? There are dissenters here within these borders. I just want to communicate that.
I think people know that, but to tell you the truth, after 2016, I started gathering up my documents to request naturalization over here. And then, there was so much resistance in the States, and I was hearing so many things that gave me hope that it was only a passage, it was 4 years, and then we'd be done with it, and people would realize the mistake, and we'd move on. And then Biden was elected, and I like what Biden did. Personally, I like Biden. I know he was old, but so what? But then they did it again. They elected that person again. And I don't understand it. I don't feel like I belong with the American people anymore. Yeah. So I've now completed my paperwork, submitted it, and hopefully after living here for 40 years, I can become a French citizen. But anyway, no, the French people, of course they know that it's not everybody, because it's not everybody in France that likes Le Pen. So they understand that. But we tend to think of people as monoliths. We tend to think of the French people. There's no such thing, really. There are people who are French, but there's not the French people, because everybody's got their own individual view of the world. And this is the same for American people and anybody else, obviously. So, no, the French people, I don't know. I would have said, like a few years ago, well, the French people love Americans, and it was true. I don't know that that's true today, because they don't understand. They just can't, they don't get it, and I don't get it. So
I haven't heard that French people love Americans. I've heard that, and this may be true with many of our allies around the world. I think many see us as spoiled and coddled and entitled and a lot of other things. Beyond that, though, your commentary about the type of person who should be president, that is a person who would be what?
Okay,
just put a punctuation mark on it.
Right. So I was listening to a recent Colbert interview of Bill Gates, who has decided to, over the next 20 years, give away 80% of his wealth, or to spend 80% of his wealth on his causes. And I think that's laudable. I think it's great. I think people who have a lot of money should give it back. They should find something to give it to that's worthwhile and do that. I also think people shouldn't be able to get that much wealth in the first place. But here we are. And I think that, I have thought for a long time that it's a horrible idea to have the people who are wealthy decide what causes are worthwhile and then put their money into those causes, because, then we have a world governed by the wealthiest people who aren't necessarily the most competent or the smartest or most benevolent people. But if we got Bill Gates giving his money to eradicating polio and malaria and the other causes that he's putting his money into, I say, bravo, do that. And today, given what is happening in the U.S. government with, all the people that Trump has been putting in place in all of the key positions, that are taking charge of all the American agencies and so forth, and the incompetence and the malevolence that is being installed, now I'm in a quandary, because maybe we do need the rich people to take over and start doing the right thing, and just leave the government. When the government becomes so corrupt and so incompetent and so evil, maybe what we need is for people who have the means and the intelligence to do so to actually take away those decisions from the government and do the good work themselves. So, and like I say, it's a quandary for me, because I really think that fundamentally it's a bad idea. But today it might actually be a good idea, and I'd like to have your thoughts on that.
Let me think about that one for a second. Can I chew on it and maybe give you my opinion here in a second off the call? But yeah, you've given me something to think about, but I need to consider it for a second. Would that be okay?
Sure.
I appreciate you calling all the way from France. And please tell everybody that we haven't all lost our collective minds over here and that the resistance is rising. Okay?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Seth. And thank you for taking my call.
Yeah. You bet. Thank you. I think the question starts with, is there such a thing as an ethical billionaire? And I'm not sure the answer is yes. I do see Bill Gates, etc., who have done a tremendous amount of charitable work. And I don't begrudge anybody great success, even in the millions of dollars. But where I used to think, well, this is America, and you can get as rich as you want, and then it's all trickled down, and look at all the industries you've created, and look at all those things that you can accomplish, blah, blah, blah. I'm not convinced that any one human being should have that much money and power in a world with this much suffering. I also think that many of the CEOs of very powerful corporations are, in fact, psychopaths. They have tendencies toward psychopathy. I would like a psychologist to weigh in on that one. But you do not get to where you are, usually, without exploitation. You do not get to where you are as a billionaire without stepping on the heads of the commoners. Do I think that's always the case? I don't know all the billionaires. Somebody made money in the market, somebody built a better mousetrap, blah, blah, blah. But at some point in a world with this much suffering, how many thousands of millions of dollars should one person have? And then they get to construct an alternative universe where they have totally different rules. They skate on stuff that you and I would maybe go to jail for. They can manipulate stock markets and be influences to foreign powers to shift world events, should any one person have that kind of power. And if you are going to make your billions as part of a society, do you not then owe an obligation, a debt to that society to pay it back? And at this point, I've got MAGAs screaming, socialism, he wants to turn us into Russia. Everybody wants to talk about freedom. Nobody wants to talk about obligation. I worry that in so many cases, the characteristics that made someone that filthy rich, dirty, rotten, filthy, stinking rich, those characteristics are not those of benevolence, because I'm not sure someone that benevolent wouldn't have already allocated resources to the society that they grew up in to benefit planet Earth. But then I think, well, Mark Cuban is a billionaire, but he seems to be on the side of progressive values. I mentioned Bill Gates. Hell, Taylor Swift is a billionaire. Became rich by providing something that people wanted. Love her or hate her, she is a tremendously savvy business person who did it her way. Rose from pretty much nothing to become one of the most successful pop artists in the history of music. So I don't begrudge Taylor Swift success, but at some point, how many thousands of millions does one person need? when there are so many people who are sick and suffering. I struggle with the idea of an ethical billionaire. But, Irene may have a point where if this is the scenario that we are stuck with, if the world's richest person is doing this much damage, and we've got a billionaire in the White House who is doing that much damage, then maybe the other billionaires are a corrective force, or could be mobilized, activated to use their massive amounts of wealth to try to stop the tide of cruelty and absurdity. And if this is the hand we're dealt, if these are the chess pieces we're playing with, would I rather have a powerful chess piece to take out the oligarchs? You're damn right I would. It's messy. It is so messy. What would you do with $1 billion? I mean, if you gave away most of it, if you gave away 99% of it, you'd still be a millionaire, right? I mean, it's I don't know, my mind cannot process all of this. You tell me what you think in the comment section, and we will hear more of what our listeners think after this. It is the final broadcast of May of 2025. Summer is on the horizon. We can look and see summer approaching. And then, of course, is fall, which means October, which means Halloween. And I'm one of those guys who is counting down the days to Halloween, even though it's not yet summertime. Drives people crazy. I'm already planning my Halloween decorations. Big deal in my house. Well, it's a big deal to me. Natalie endures it. She likes it more than she says. So I have options this year. I can't believe I'm telling you this in the month of May, but it's on my mind. I'm either going to do an alien theme because I bought kind of a cheap xenomorph costume, which is fun and funny. I thought about doing maybe the alien eggs all over the yard and having the alien theme. I thought about Squid Games. My fantasy is to have one of those giant dolls from the game. I forget, what do they call it? Stop or go game, where when she looks the other way, you can run, but if she looks at you, you have to stop and freeze or else you die. What's the name of that game? I can't remember. But there's this big statue, 15 feet tall. I don't have the money or the skill to build something like that, but oh my God, in a perfect world, I would have that and then some Squid Games uniformed figures all around, and we'd let people play the game, for fun. We wouldn't actually shoot them. And then the one I'm probably going to do because it's cheapest is I'm thinking about doing a skeleton band. I've got the skeletons already. I've accumulated them over the years. Build like a fake drum set, buy a couple of old plastic toy guitars and hang them around the necks of the skeletons and put a dance floor out. And then we just play music while the skull band stands there and everybody can dance to Halloween music. That might be kind of fun. I don't know. These are the things that occupy my brain in late May of 2025. But what occupies your brain? Let's find out. Nathan is calling from area code 920. Hi, thanks for waiting. Are you there?
Yep, I am here. Thank you.
Let's talk. What's on your mind?
Pardon, just moving from one room to the other. I had a question. I got to dust off my Bibles one of these days. I'm an atheist, but looking back on the past salvation, I think, according to Catholics and Christians, I think with Abraham, it boils down to believe, obey, in some form of repentance through sacrifice or asking for forgiveness directly from God. Noah, same thing. Moses, same thing, but with a lot more rules to obey. And then it comes to Jesus, which is supposed to be this new covenant, something brand new. And it feels like it's the same thing. Believe, obey, repent through some form of forgiveness, or maybe a sacrifice through martyrdom.
Are you asking me if I see similarities from religion to religion?
I think this probably would have been a better question for Dr. Bowen or Paula Gia, but I had time. I rarely get to call into these programs.
It would have been a question for somebody who was actually qualified. Yes. I'd like to talk about faiths, the major funding religions, especially like Mexican food. Like you walk into a restaurant, you say, I would like a taco. What's on a taco? Well, you got a tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, and tomato. Well, I would like a tostada instead. What's on that? Well, you got a tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, and tomato, right? I would like an enchilada. What's on that? Well, you got a tortilla, meat, lettuce, cheese, tomato. I think that the major religions have the same ingredients. They're just served up in different ways, right? You've got a holy book, you've got a dogma, you've got a paradise, you've got damnation or potential punishment, posthumous existence, you've got your clergy and priests. And, I see a lot of similarities. I don't know. What do you think of my Mexican food analogy? Is that just lame?
It makes me a little bit hungry. I was on the treadmill before I called in.
I may have to. I would DoorDash it, but I don't think I want to pay $35 for an enchilada, which is kind of, you got to be super lazy to use DoorDash. And I have been guilty as of late at the end of a long day. It's a totally different conversation. Nathan, was there anything else about the similarities between the religions that you wanted to speak about?
It was mostly just focusing on Christianity and the various sects. Because I think, according to what I've heard from some Jewish people, salvation is kind of a revolving door. I don't quite understand it. I'd have to read up on the Torah I have, but all my religious books are in a storage locker collecting dust right now.
Nathan, if we're talking about the different splinterings or denominations of Christianity, you're saying that even though they split, they have much more in common than they have in disagreement?
It was mostly just focusing on the paths to salvation, starting with Abraham going to Jesus, because they all seem to be the same thing, although they seem like they're being presented as something new. And when you get to Jesus, he seems pointless because it's the same damn thing. Whether you believe Jesus is half divine or fully divine, you're still asking God directly for forgiveness, and you still have to believe, obey, and repent. Whether you're talking Jesus as divine, then you're just talking directly to God. If it's half divine, Jesus, I guess, is kind of serving as a consigliere. But still, you have to obey God.
Yeah, I misunderstood. I think I thought you were making a comparative religions comment, but you're making a comparative denominations comment. With tens of thousands of different denominations of Christianity, I'm not sure we can use the word all, but I take your point that they seem to be serving the same ingredients, only in slightly different orders.
Well, I'm kind of taking the denominations out of it altogether and just focusing on like the paths as they are in the Bible. Because when you just look at the paths as they're presented, I know the translations are going to be a little bit different, but the ingredients for the salvation through each one, whether it be Abraham, Noah, Moses, and Jesus, they all seem to be the exact same thing. And it baffles me when I think about it, why we would even need anything beyond Moses. Because Jesus doesn't present anything new. Whether half divine or fully divine, you're still petitioning to God. You still have to obey all the commandments, and you still have to ask for forgiveness or have some sort of sacrifice or repentance. That's what's kind of baffling. I'm mild autism, so I'm kind of like focused on that thing. Just Jesus himself being the whole advent of him, or the whole religion being formed around him, just being completely pointless.
That's deep. I'm going to have to think about that one, Nathan. Apparently, I need more coffee.
No worries.
I don't have enough RAM to process this one immediately, Nathan. But it's interesting, and I'd be curious to hear what the comments have to say about it as well. So thanks for offering.
I'm an over-the-road trucker, so most of the time I hear the programs. I'm at work and can't call in. I just listen on the drive.
No, it's an interesting approach. Let's chew on that one. Safe travels out there, Nathan. Thank you for calling.
Yep. You have a good day there. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could go further toward the beginning, the genesis, literal genesis of the story. If God is omniscient, why would he have implemented a plan that he foreknew would fail? A riff on that is, why would God create anyone that he foreknew would end up in hell? We don't have hell until the New Testament. Depart from me, you who are cursed, into a lake of everlasting fire and damnation. So the scenarios are a little bit different, where the Old Testament seems to be a little more focused on works, obeying God directly, where the New Testament is more, you got to have faith, but faith without works is dead. So works are important, but it's not about works. I don't know. I need a topper on the coffee to be able to process. I don't have the bandwidth to be able to properly address this. You deserved better, Nathan. You deserved more from me. I leave it. I stand on the shoulders of giants, the greater skeptics who are watching and listening to the show today. Michael is calling from 207. Hi.
Oh, hello. Fancy meeting you here.
What's going on? What's on your mind?
Well, we're supposed to be, a lot of our problems right now are because of breakdown of our rule of law, right? To me, this way I see it anyway.
Okay.
And I'd like to present the idea that I think lawyers should be civil servants because we're a nation of laws. The law is supposed to work for everybody, and you can't have equal access to the law when it takes money to access it. And just like we provide cops, prosecutors, district attorneys, all those things, lawyers should be right there too. You got a problem, you go to the courthouse or the civil service building or whatever and present your problem to a panel, 2 or 3 judges or lawyers or whatever, and they hear you out. If they think you got a case, excuse me, I'm breathing hard because I just ran upstairs.
You're fine.
If they think that you got a case, you get assigned a lawyer, and whoever you got a problem with, they get assigned a lawyer. That way one party can't hold you out with because they can afford a battery of lawyers, and you can't hardly afford one, you know?
I think some would argue that the public defender model meets this need. I think your larger point stands where we don't want the lowest common denominators, right? We want the highly skilled, the greatest in their field, to be available to those who normally wouldn't be able to pay $400 an hour for a qualified attorney.
Right. That only works for criminal cases. I'm talking about if you've got an issue with the law, if you've got a problem with somebody that's a corporation you want to go up against, or a neighbor, or whoever, if you've got a problem, it's not criminal, it's civil. And it still takes money to deal with a civil case. And if you haven't got any, you can't make your complaint in the first place because you just can't access the system. And if you do have a legitimate complaint about somebody, they can ride you out by hiring more attorneys and running postponements, and they don't care about the legal bill they're racking up because the point is to win. You can't beat that.
I feel the same about healthcare. I feel like a society
absolutely
has an obligation to take care of its own, not those who can simply afford the policy.
Yep.
And it's stupid to live in a culture where even those who have full health insurance, full coverage, can still go bankrupt with one major medical event. And people can cry socialism all they want, but I envy Canada because their healthcare system, despite its imperfection, seems better than what we've got here.
Absolutely. Our healthcare system is a mess. But so is our legal system. We wouldn't be here now. Well, I think Biden's biggest failing was not taking care of the Supreme Court while he was in.
I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg and admired the hell out of her. And I'm pissed that she did not step down when she was in poor health so that a non-zealot could have been appointed in her place. You know, just one of those things.
Well, the whole appointment system for the past few judges has been broken anyway. They've all broken their oaths of office. They've lied and perjured themselves. They're an illegitimate Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned. And Biden's biggest mistake was not fixing that. If they had done that, we wouldn't be here now.
All right, Michael, I got you.
My uneducated opinion.
Thanks for calling and giving your opinion. I know a lot of folks will have opinions about your opinion.
Oh, I could give you a lot of opinions, but I know you ain't got time to hear that.
I don't have time this time. Be safe out there, okay? We'll see you later.
All right.
You know, I'm still thinking about health care. When I was a devout Christian, I opposed universal health care or government-provided or government-funded health care. I don't even know why. except that we were scared with the S word, socialism, right? Small government good, big government bad. Jesus was a laissez-faire capitalist. It was that kind of thing. I mean, it was the most unconsidered approach, especially when we look at societies and the responsibilities that those societies have to care for their citizens, which is what we were talking about with the billionaires. You know, I've totally switched my perspective. I think about how I wasn't overtly trying to be cruel, but I was so dismissive. Well, you know, get a job and buy your health insurance, or get a job where the employer will pay for your health insurance. Plenty of opportunities out there. I mean, you just got to look. You got to be committed. You got to want it. I mean, how naive was that? How privileged was that? Now I see these stories on the news, and they're presented as feel-good stories. In broadcast terms, they're called a kicker. They often play these sort of warm, fuzzy stories at the end of a newscast after all the doom and gloom to leave you with kind of a sugary taste in your mouth. And they're like, little Timmy was 13 years old when his mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. Timmy started his own lemonade stand at $5 a glass. The school mobilized, his community rallied around him, the word spread on the media. He has sold 500 glasses of lemonade and helped to pay for his mother's health care. What a beautiful story. 20 years ago, I'd have been like, wow, that's really sweet. Right now, I think, Jesus Christ, why in the world is a kid having to sell freaking lemonade to save his mother? These aren't feel-good stories. They are indictments of a broken system. And yet, somehow, Christians who say that Jesus fed the poor, he divided up the loaves and the fishes, or multiplied the loaves and the fishes, and he fed the 5,000. And he told the rich man, sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and follow me. There's this notion, I think, that well, if the government is meeting your needs and you rely on the government, maybe you're not relying on Jesus, or you worship the state. That's one of the narratives out there. Is healthcare a right, or is it a privilege, something that has to be earned? Do we really want to dole out a bunch of free stuff to people, takers out there, not providers, not producers, but takers, and all they're going to do is drain us dry? I swear to you, the Christian faith is infected with this kind of thinking. Even as many of the people who are part of that faith are being financially devastated as they go through their own health crises. And then a side note, they go in and they get science-based medical care when they have a good day on chemo, or they recover from a wound of some kind. They often ignore the doctor and thank Jesus. That's a whole other pet peeve of mine. But when did we, as human travelers on this planet, brothers and sisters, primates who have evolved together and must share this rock in a trillions of galaxies universe, when did we decide that maybe the weak should die out? Maybe the unfortunate did have it coming. How ironic is it that this fundy religion, Christianity, has in some ways adopted a kind of social Darwinism? Or maybe it's that they simply believe the church has to meet all those needs. The government's role is to be small and allow citizens to own Bibles and guns. I guess maybe that's what they're thinking. It's a private issue that should be solved in the free market, maybe? I don't know. It's messy. Anyway, my mind spins on this idea that you and I live in ostensibly a first world nation with more resources than anybody else on the planet, and we've got people who cannot afford the basics of their health care. And if the best version of Jesus Christ showed up in 5 minutes and tried to do something about it, MAGA evangelicals would point at him, call him a socialist, probably throw him in a black van and ship his ass down to El Salvador. Okay, I'm done venting. That's all we're going to do this week. Always a pleasure to spend some time with you. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. Hang in there. I'll see you soon.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.